Hello folks, welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to talk about internalized racism, how internalized racism is undermining the integrations of LGBT refugees and asylum seekers in the United States and in South Africa where I lived. Um, I'm going to focus in these two countries, the United States and South Africa, because these two countries have a history together. Um, you guys know what happened in South Africa during apartheid, how there was segregation between whites and black, and how there was oppression of black South Africans. And you all know about the civil rights movement in the United States, how it has affected the lives of African Americans, and how that oppression has affected their life. So I've been reading this pamphlet. Um, it's called Internalized Racism. It's for Susan Lipsker. So she tried to write a little bit about internalized racism, where she was giving some advice on about revelation counseling. So in this revelation counseling, um, the revelation counseling is actually about educating or trying. It's like a therapy. It's like a counseling therapy. Revelation try to help those Black South African or African American who have internalized racism to heal from that oppression. And be, why this is important? It's because those South African or African Americans who have internalized oppression, who have internalized racism, are turning it toward other black people who are foreigners, who are LGBT refugees from Africa and LGBT asylum seekers. So why this is important? It's because LGBT refugees and asylum seekers from Africa flee to South Africa and come to the United States. As soon as they get into those two countries, they have a community. Like I'm Congolese and I have a Congolese community in the United States. I have a Congolese community in South Africa. But my community cannot accept me. My community cannot accept me because I'm homosexual. I might be Congolese, but because of my sexual orientation, it is making it harder for my community to accept me. So, another day, I'm going to talk about racism in general within the LGBT community. But today, I want to focus on racism, internalized racism in African American and Black South African. So why I want to focus with this, because we have something in common. We are black, and some of Black South African, some of African American are members of the LGBT community. But what I found, there's no integration between LGBT, Black LGBT South African and LGBT refugee and asylum seeker from Africa. There's no integration between African American and LGBT refugee from Africa. There's no communication. There's no helping one another. There's nothing like that. Why that is still a big problem? It's because of internalized racism. So some say this is like the case of xenophobia that is going on in South Africa. Xenophobia that is going on in South Africa, some people call it Afrophobia. is people in South Africa have been oppressed a lot during apartheid, that they couldn't, the majority of South Africans are poor, and they benefit almost nothing from apartheid. They are unemployed, they are poor, they are going through some extreme situations. So the best, what they, like for people who come from other African countries, who go to South Africa to look for opportunities or to flee there because of persecution on the account of their sexual orientation, they become now the blame. They blame them for poverty. They blame them for unemployment. They blame them for everything. It's because they've internalized racism. They still have that feeling of retaliation. But instead of choosing to, to retaliate against those people who who exploited them, who used them, they start using it among the most vulnerable. So I'm just going to read some of the phrases from this pamphlet, some of the quotes from this pamphlet from Susan Lipsky, to make you guys understand why it is important for this re-evaluation counseling to work and to heal some of our African American and some of South African black South Africans who have internalized racism. So here I'm going to read some of it. The result has been that these distress patterns. So internalized racism creates some distress patterns. Those distress patterns created by oppression and racism from the outside has been played out in the only two places it seems safe to do so: first, upon members of our own groups, particularly upon those over whom we we have some degree of power or control, our children; second, upon ourselves, through all manner of self-invalidation, self-doubt, isolation, fear, feeling of powerlessness, and despair. So, here somewhere it's written, how does internalized racism affect us? What does it look like? What are some of the way pattern of internalized racism operate among us? Here I had one of the example: relations. Individual relations. Pattern of internalized oppression cause us to dramatize our feeling of rage, fear, indignation, frustration, and powerlessness at each other, at other black people, often those closest to us. So these are the effects of some of the pattern of internalized oppression. It causes how to dramatize our feeling of rage. So this might be the cause of xenophobia that is happening in South Africa. Fears, indignation, frustration, powerlessness at each other, at other black people, often those close to us, and our children. We invalidate our children with fierce criticism and fault finding, intended to strengthen them out, but in the process destroying their self-confidence. So here there's another pattern. It's called isolation from other black people. Pattern of internalized racism have caused us to be deeply hurt by our brothers and sisters. We often develop defensive patterns of fear, mistrust, withdrawal, and isolation from other blacks. On top of this, we sometimes feel ashamed. We sometimes feel ashamed of our fear for our own people. This isolation, which results from internalized oppression, can become so severe that a black person may feel safer with more trustful of white people than of blacks. This is an illusion and confusion created by the person, but an individual might accept living inside this pattern because it feels comfortable, and therefore. So these are just some of the examples that shows why there's Afrophobia, why there's xenophobia, and why there's fear. African American fear other African. Black South African fear other African. They call them foreigner. While there's a lot of white people who are in South Africa who come from France, from Europe, they've never been called foreigners. People who are foreigner are black African from other African countries. Pattern of internalized stereotype is another pattern. Internalized stereotypes, this pattern of internalized racism has caused to accept many of stereotypes of black created by oppressive majority society. We have been taught to be angry at, ashamed of anything that differs too much from mythical idea of middle class of majority. Culture, skin that is too dark, hair that is too kinky dress, talk, and music that is too loud. So here is another pattern. It's called survival. This is another distress pattern of internalized racism. Survival is because we have been victims of attacks, humiliation, and exploitation. The re-stimulated partner draw us to play out this behavior on others and feel that we must do so in order to survive, or at least to prevent ourselves from again being the victim of patterns. Here's another pattern: other oppression and divisiveness. The working of distress partner have caused us to introduce, tolerate, proliferate, and internalize within our black subculture other than oppression, such as classism, other oppressions such as classism, sexism, adultism, anti-Semitism, and the oppression of other groups, other oppressed groups, like for example the LGBT community. This has only created further disunity and divisiveness among black men and women, and young persons, and persons who appear to be different classes. In fact, almost all black people are of working class, although this reality may be obscured from both themselves and other blacks. Unity and pooling of power among blacks and between black and other oppressed groups is thus effectively prevented. Know that this can be destroyed by systematic and committed discharge and reevaluation. This destructive pattern can be replaced by a reality of rationality, love, power, unity among all black and all oppressed people. So what I like here, they say in the last paragraph, they say they say all of these displaced patterns that that Black South African and African American experience can be destroyed by systematic and committed discharge and re-evaluation. This destructive pattern can be replaced by reality of rationality, which means rationality is to find you to come back to your reason, to come back to this spirit of brotherhood, of feeling like this is my brother. We have same skin color, we have, even though he might be from other African country, or even if he might be, you know. So they call it reality of rationality, love, power, unity among all black and all open. We have to remain unified. Unity is very, very important. It is very important, especially for LGBT refugees. They arrive here alone, and they arrive in South Africa alone. They don't know anybody, and as soon as they get it, even the community of their country don't want them. They treat them badly. So they tend to other LGBT people from countries where it's legal to be gay, like in the United States. Some states it's illegal, like in South Africa. So there's some LGBT communities in the country. What are they doing to help others who are asylum seekers and who are refugees? So please, once again, I urge you to read more about internalized racism and follow counseling about reevaluation, um, reevaluation counseling. Look it up on the internet, on Google. Try to get in touch with therapists. Try to find a way to do a reevaluation of internalized racism. I do this because it's affecting the life of people who have to flee their countries to come to safety, and as soon as they get into safety, they cannot integrate because they have to deal with xenophobia, homophobia, racism. So today I focus more on the how internalized racism is undermining integration of LGBT refugees and asylum seekers. Next time, I'm going to talk about racism in the LGBT community as a whole. So, thank you very much. Thank you for taking time to watch the video on my YouTube channel, and I hope you guys are having a great Tuesday. Thank you very much. Bye bye.